Welcome to the Explainer. You know, in just 3 short verses, one of the Bible's most celebrated heroes gets one of its most shocking rebukes. Today, we're jumping right into Matthew chapter 16 to really understand this incredibly dramatic moment. So, we're looking at a wild moment here in Matthew 16. I mean, talk about whiplash. Just moments after Peter's amazing confession of faith, Jesus delivers one of his absolute sharpest rebukes. We're going to walk through verses 21 to 23 to see exactly how Peter goes from being called the rock to, well, a stumbling block. All right, let's set the scene. This all happens right after Peter's famous declaration that Jesus is the Christ. It's a real high point. But then, Jesus just completely pivots. He shifts the whole conversation from who he is to the shocking and, frankly, brutal details of what he has to do. And here it is in verse 21. For the very first time, Jesus just lays it all out there. He spells out the grim reality of his mission. And listen, it's a path of suffering and death, and at the hands of the religious leaders in Jerusalem, no less. This is the exact opposite of the conquering hero his disciples were all expecting. You see how Jesus breaks it down? It's like 4 clear, unavoidable steps. It's this deliberate path that moves from the pain of suffering and death all the way to the ultimate victory of being raised on the 3rd day. Now, you've got to understand, the disciples, and really a lot of people at the time, were looking for a Lord of hosts, a warrior king, a Messiah who would finally kick the Romans out. That was the hope. But Jesus, he was revealing a totally different kind of kingdom, one that wasn't about earthly power at all, but about eternal salvation. So how in the world did the disciples react to this devastating news? As you can imagine, Peter's response is immediate, and it's very human. So in verse 22, Peter, the same guy who was just praised for his divine insight, he literally takes Jesus aside and starts to rebuke him. Can you imagine? He flat out rejects this whole idea of a suffering Messiah. He's basically saying, "No way, Lord, this is not happening to you." Peter's reaction, it comes from a good place, from loyalty. But it was completely stuck in a worldly view of what power and victory look like. For him, a Messiah who suffers, that was a total contradiction. He just couldn't make those 2 ideas fit together. Okay, now we get to verse 23, and Jesus' response to Peter is without a doubt one of the most stunning and severe things he says in the entire Gospels. It must have been an absolute whiplash moment for everyone standing there. I mean, just think about this for a second. The same man Jesus just called blessed and the rock is now being called Satan. Whoa. Now, in this context, the name isn't like calling him the devil. It's more of a title, meaning an adversary, an opponent, or a stumbling block. And that brings up the big question, right? Why? Why use such incredibly harsh language? Why say this to his lead apostle, the man he just named the rock and gave the keys of the kingdom to? Well, the answer is right there in the second half of the verse. Jesus gets right to the heart of the problem. He says Peter's whole focus is on human wants and human fears, the things of men, and that way of thinking was in direct opposition to God's necessary divine plan. And the specific word used here is so important. The Greek word is skandalon. It's not just an offense, it's the trigger of a trap, a stumbling block put in someone's way. So Jesus saw Peter's words not just as a mistake, but as a dangerous temptation trying to pull him off the path of redemption. And really, this whole back and forth, it just boils down to a fundamental conflict. It's a clash between 2 totally different worldviews, the things of men versus the things of God. So, on one side, you've got the human way of thinking, right? We want a savior for right now, a conquering king who avoids all the pain and grabs that political power. But on the other side, you have God's plan. And it's all about a spiritual savior, a sacrificial lamb who must endure suffering to build something that lasts forever, an eternal kingdom. It's like one commentary puts it, Peter really does go from hero to goat in a shockingly short amount of time. And this whole episode is just this powerful reminder, isn't it? That even the absolute strongest faith can be sidetracked by our human expectations and our natural fear of suffering. And that kind of leaves us with a pretty provocative question to chew on. In our own lives, what happens when our expectations for how things should be collide with a reality that requires sacrifice? Are we focused on the things of men, our own comfort, our own idea of victory? Or are we willing to be open to the things of God, even when that path includes a cross?